America is a country that was founded for the purpose of allowing Christians to do their duty before God and not to have their consciences ruled by the doctrines and commandments of men. Reese Fund exists in order to see the 10 Commandments properly applied, not just as a plaque on the wall, but to actually be used in business as though they're commandments from God that we're supposed to obey. Our goal is to find businesses and to buy them and to build them up. We want to find manufacturing businesses and use them to make sure that we can maintain our capacity to do things here. Reese Fund, Christian capital, boldly deployed.
Here we are.
There we go.
Back again.
Yep. Hey, y'all. Welcome to Water Break. Just getting my audio adjustment here. Thank you for joining us. If you want to be in a conversation with us, please email us wrenchmedia@gmail.com. That's wrench with no W, media@gmail.com. Follow my wife on Instagram. Thank you, Carter. We're slowly developing this show better and better. And then you can follow me on Twitter. You got
not me.
You don't. Carter doesn't have that one. He did so good with Annie's Instagram, but he didn't have my Twitter.
The water boy. Are you the water boy on Twitter?
I am GM Wrench on
Just
Twitter.
follow the fights, follow the smoke, you guys, and you'll find him. It's not hard.
Blazing trails of fire and smoke.
Yeah, wrecking ball right through it.
Two things I just want to bring you into the loop on. First, if you guys been following my Christian Business Leaders Network, go to businessmakers.network, businessmakers.network. We actually have a local summit in Lancaster, Pennsylvania next week. You can sign up for that through businessmakers.network. We got a summit also coming in Nashville at the beginning of May and a summit in Battleground, Washington at the end of May also. And then secondly, our National Fight Laugh Feast Conference is in Nashville on October 16th through the 18th this year. The topic is School Wars, how the public school system destroyed America, or how to rebuild Christendom with your kids. That's kind of the two taglines we're working with and everything. So you can go sign up for that. Yeah. It's a blast. We have Jumpy Castles for Kids, very family integrated conference, and some great talks. Pastor George Grant, Pastor Doug Wilson, Pastor Toby. We got just a great amount of speakers coming out for that conference. And this is our 7th conference, national conference.
Don't look at me. That sounds right.
Yeah, something like that.
One year we did 2, and that kind of threw me.
Yeah, it did throw me too. So we are excited to have a doctor on the show. We are not doctors.
Nope.
So we're excited to have a doctors on the show. And we'd like to bring in Dr. Patrick Flynn.
Yes, I can introduce him if you want me to.
You get in and introduce him. I almost want to bring his assistant on, Erin, too, because she's a firecracker too. So
we love you, Erin. You have a very important job, and honestly, I wish I had an Erin who could just run interference for my entire life. But,
yes,
maybe sometime. Right. All right, you guys, let me just tell you about Dr. Patrick Flynn. Very excited to have him on the show. He's very kind. He's a very busy man, so we're grateful he's here. Listen, this bio is insane, and I just want you guys to know this is a short one, okay? Because there's a longer one because he's super, super accomplished. But here we go. Dr. Patrick Flynn is a chiropractor and the founder of The Wellness Way. He is a highly sought-after speaker and best-selling author with educational training from numerous learning institutions, including Palmer College of Chiropractic, the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. He's from Wisconsin. He just told us that. The University of Wisconsin Marinette, Scott College, Northwestern Health Sciences University, National University of Health and Sciences, and courses at Harvard Medical School, HMX Fundamentals Online Certificate Program in Immunology, Virology, and Vaccines. That's interesting. I want to have him on some other time to talk about that stuff. And health and wellness, designing a sustainable nutrition plan, pioneering a different approach to healthcare. He has trained chiropractors, MDs. He trains people. That's what's cool. MDs, nurses, nurse practitioners, surgeons, pharmacists, health restoration coaches, and others. His network is now comprised of over 60 clinics, seeing people from around the world. My goodness. Welcome, Dr. Patrick Flynn.
Oh, thank you so much to have me. I'm actually excited. I get interviewed a lot, but I'm telling you, to be interviewed by you two, I am so excited because we have so much in common.
Yeah, I think we do. We're really excited to have you here too. And thank you again. I know you're busy and you're in high demand. So thank you for taking the time. Yeah.
You want to kick it off?
Yeah. So Dr. Patrick Flynn,
yes,
I know you. So just to give you, because you don't know us that well, I work in the space. I've been in personal training, health coaching, nutrition counseling for almost 20 years. This guy does none of that. No. And so we decided.
I'm the dumb guy on the show. So you get the dumb questions from me and the smart questions from her.
He's like a regular guy. So he brings the regular person questions and feedback to the show. Yeah. And he's a dude. So it's good to have both, But all that to say, I've listened, your name has come up quite a bit in the podcast I listened to, the different experts I've followed. And so I know what an expert you are in the field of women's hormones. And you're very, very good. on that topic, among others. But what I like about you the most is that you seem very, very good at using your extensive knowledge of men and women's very differing hormone landscapes. And basically, you're able to explain how that affects their behavior.
Yeah.
And that's where I want to go today, because I think that is such a missing piece.
Okay.
I think just knowing about women's hormones in general is a missing piece, but then just like, what does this mean in relationship? What does this mean in real life? So,
and I just want to know at certain times a month, why my wife doesn't like me?
I feel like you're going to answer that.
I have a great explanation of that. Totally.
See, selfishly, this is for me and for my husband and for all of our listeners, because I know we have tons of just, husbands and wives out there trying to understand each other. So I'd love to talk about that, how hormones dictate behaviors, preferences, do's and don'ts in relationship, etc. So sound good to you? All right. Well, let's just dive right in. Can you talk to our audience and us a little bit about, just in general, how hormones dictate some of the major differences in men and women? Because I think anyone with their head screwed on straight understands that we are different, but can you help us understand why?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first start from the simplest aspect. The hormone's a messenger, period. It's a message. That's all it is. Okay. It's a little fat and a little protein mixed together that, communicates with different parts of the body and also your neurological system and tells it what to do. It's really that simple. And so if you think of it this way, if you ever notice that there's a vast difference between men and women, okay, and they are hormonal regulated that way. And when you think about hormones, there's physical changes and there's mental changes. So I said, having good hormones, there's physical and mental changes. Having bad hormones, there's physical and mental consequences. And I didn't realize this because, and I'll explain to you how I got into the whole process. But I started to actually apply this all clinically 26 years ago. And next thing you know, people started coming and say, "Hey doc, my marriage is better." I'm like, "What do you mean your marriage is better?" And stuff like that. Yeah. And it just blew me away. And next thing you know, I had Christian conferences calling me and marriage conferences. I'm like going, okay, I'm just teaching the biology of how hormones affect a man, hormone affects a woman. And then I just made a statement one time and said, "You don't understand their spouse, understand your hormones." And then guess what happens is then yes, I'm like I said, I'm like you guys. I'm just a simple country boy that grew up in northern Wisconsin that was presented in a situation to where I met this beautiful woman. And after 2 weeks of dating, I went over to her house and knocked on her door, and she came in there and she was crying. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, what did I do already? We've been dating for 2 weeks. Okay. So she said, "Come on and sit down." And she started to tell me, even though we've been dating for 2 weeks, I didn't realize she was this sick. She had ulcerative colitis. She had endometriosis, she had cystic acne, and she had cluster headaches. And then she let me know that she couldn't have children. And I'm synopsing the story as fast as I can. But what happened is she said, "Listen," she goes, "I know you want to have a big family someday, and I can't have kids. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to leave me right now, and I understand." She goes, "I'll be very saddened." But she goes, because on the second day she knew me, she goes, "I think I'm going to marry you," and stuff like that. And it's kind of funny because then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my goodness, I was presented with a choice. Because what I learned from my education going a different realm. So I don't even like the term. This is me personally. I don't like the term expert because I just have, as you can see right here, I just have a different perspective behind me on my show there. I just have a different perspective of looking at things. And because I came out with it, applied it clinically, started doing it all over the world, they think I'm an expert in something. I said, no, I just have a different perspective and a different approach. So then I looked at her and she said I could break up with her. And I said, and then guess what happens? I said, absolutely not. Well, now we've been married 24 years and we have 4 beautiful daughters.
Wow.
I love that. I love the end of that story. Yeah.
Yes. So the long story short is and now here's what happened. And when you look at what's going on with her, I said, I want to see what's going on with you. So I got her stuff from her current doctor. Okay. Which once again, let me say this, very caring, wanted to help, but just end result, she just kept getting sicker. This time she's only 23 years old and I'm 24. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then something stuck out to me so dramatically on those labs that it changed my life and it changed how I communicate to all women. And for example, and just entertain me for a second as I ask you guys a couple questions. Yeah. If we were to look at males, what's that major hormone that dictates a man both physically and mentally? What's that major hormone?
Well, we call it testosterone.
It's all right. And there's physical and mental things that do it. And because women don't understand the physical and mental things that does it, what happens, and they never explain this at a young age, they just want them to think like us. And it's like, it doesn't work that way. On the flip side, let's go over here. And what is the hormone that then makes women physically mentally who they basically are? Now, once again, we all have the same hormones, but there's more dominant ones than others. So what do you think that major hormone is?
Right. Well,
Your turn.
because I've listened to you, I know that the
But just
answer is
yes.
estrogens.
Yes. But
Yes.
see, it's key. And then I realized, because I looked at my wife's labs, aka girlfriend at the time, and I realized women are being misled because estrogen is not a hormone. Estrogen is a term that describes many hormones.
Yeah.
And on her labs, they had one. So I sat there back in a different perspective, said, how can we determine the mental and physical capability of a woman or what's wrong with them without having a full picture? So I called the largest lab in the world, said, can we measure them? They said, yes. Why? Insurance doesn't pay for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I have this beautiful woman that I want to be with and have kids. And because she had endometriosis, she had more of an estrogens dominant condition.
Mm-hmm.
And then guess what happens? The one that they measured, they actually was normal. So they told her it was genetic and all these things. But what they did, their picture was incomplete. And that's why when I started to look at it this way, I saw the physical complications that go on when those hormones are off. But you understand that there's mental consequences if they're off. Yeah. And so therefore, what I started to realize is how estrogens affect the neurology, how testosterone and everything affects neurology, and how we even see the world is dramatically different. So I started to show men and women what estrogens do, and I started to show men and women what testosterone start to do, and they start to understand each other better and stuff like that.
So real quick here, how many estrogens does women have?
Well, put it this way, over 10.
Okay.
Right,
and
but
so
they usually
yes,
go ahead.
They usually measure one
or two
if you're cyclic or if you're menopausal. If you're lucky, you get several of them. And now even today, they try to measure them a little bit more, but they're still very dramatically incomplete at looking at them.
Yeah.
And is there any okay, so over 10. So I assume some estrogens maybe impact the woman's body more, some less, some maybe more mentally, some maybe more physically, whatever.
Absolutely.
What are the and I assume it sounds like you can do a panel for all these estrogens, but you got to talk your lab into it or your doctor into it, whatever.
Well, and on top of it, it's just this one panel. You need to do a combination of labs. And that's where, so when people say, hey, doc, I have my hormones test, I said, well, let me see both your labs. Like, both? I said, blood. Well, then your testing's incomplete. Or doc, I just had urine. Well, your testing's incomplete. Mm-hmm. And so I just really started to say, listen, I just want to, how can we look at a problem with only a partial information? No matter what you're looking at, no matter what part of things. So I started to run the labs and started to see some things that were affecting men and women, both mentally and physically, and start to have a different perspective of approaching that way, and saw great clinical outcomes.
So can you target, sorry, I'm taking this over a little bit.
You're fine.
So can you target, let's say, okay, you run the labs, and it sounds like you need to do a urine lab and a blood lab to be able to give you the full picture that you need. And then you say, oh, hey, these two estrogens are off. We need to focus on these two estrogens. And you can single out the focus on those two estrogens through medication or through therapy. What happens?
Well, remember, if you think of it this way, nobody's ever sick because of a medication deficiency. Okay. Right. So there's things that massively throw people's hormones off. Men and women, actually, their hormones get disrupted by many things. I've come to certain conclusions. I believe I can scientifically prove them. I just will call them opinions, because we're both affected differently by different factors. And I believe that God created us to handle different things, and I can prove it. For example, if I were to just give you the general aspects that throw men's hormones off compared to women, they're dramatically different. But then what it did, it set the stage. And I started to share this with women, and they're like, doc, you understand me so well. I'm like, I don't understand you. I can never physically feel what you do. I can never go through it. I can be empathetic because I understand it. But here's what I want you to think about this way. When you look at ladies' hormones, and I know we only have a certain amount of time, so I'm going to jump right to it that way. Dominant, which I've found more than ever in history, the number one thing that destroys women's hormones and actually their health is actually mental stress. Mm-hmm. It'll throw it off faster than anything. It'll destroy it. So me, as a Bible-believing Christian man, as a provider and protector, what happens is this, and I employ more women than men all over the country, okay? I believe that we have to be very careful at stressing out women. And see, this is where the whole I've even been called misogynistic. I'm like, wait, as a protector and provider, and I see something that can destroy a woman's health, destroy a woman's life, I have no problem saying, no. You need to keep the stress down. You need to do these things this way because you are going to suffer. For example, ladies, you know this. You could have had a really bad mental stressful event and it delayed or skipped your cycle. You say, it changes everything.
Yeah.
And then, but guess what happens? If I were to attack you, Gabe, right now, guess what happens? Your testosterone.
It goes up.
It goes up. Yeah.
It goes up.
Yeah.
We're meant to handle stress. And so that's why, and so therefore, the changes in physiology, the messages are very different inside a man's body compared to a woman's body. And so therefore, I'm like, listen, ladies, go for your dreams, do everything that way. But you start putting yourself through the mental stress that a man does, you're gonna end up with some consequences. And sometimes they're very bad health, sometimes very bad psychiatric realm. To a guy, man, one of the best things a guy can do to get healthy is start putting his body through stress.
We've talked about this a lot, and it's just really cool to hear your very educated, like hormonal take on it. But we talk about this all the time, how clearly God, and it's clear in the Bible that really God designed men to go to war, to fight, to do those hard things. And that doesn't mean that women can't do hard things, but our body.
And in some sense, the men's body thrives off that.
Yeah. Isn't that cool though? Like you actually get more of that testosterone that you need. And women just have this whole other equally important role, but our bodies really, and I just working in like the exercise, health and fitness side of things, I have found this too, that stress is, really maybe number one on the list of health wreckers, just like absolute health wreckers. What's some of the mechanisms there? How hormonally speaking, when a woman is either physically stressed, like, working out, too much CrossFit, not enough food, or mental stress, or a combination of both, which is often what you see. What's the mechanism of that stress actually affecting the hormones?
Yeah, and I'm related to both now men and women together. Okay, now not as far as the same situation, just what can happen. So, for example, if we look at it this way, let's talk about just a basic chemical process. If I want to take something from A and convert it to D, I have to go from A to B, B to C, and C to D, and I have a beginning and end stage of the whole biochemical reaction.
Right.
So when all of a sudden, so let's say, for example, right now, that I were to come in there and attack Gabe and attack you. What happens is this: his physiology is going to respond, testosterone is going to go up, his cortisol will go up, but he has no direct relationship to drain his testosterone from his cortisol. It doesn't. Women have a direct connection to convert their progesterone into cortisol and cortisone. So if they're highly inflamed, if they're highly stressed out, if they throw off their cortisol, if they throw off their cortisone, that's why I always said women have to be very careful about when they work out. Because you know why? Because if they get highly inflamed when hormones are low, you're going to drain them more, or they're supposed to get elevated, you're going to drain them more. And that's why these women that come in, they're extremely high fitness. It's like, yes, I kind of talk a little bit about CrossFit because I've had women come in CrossFit, six-pack abs. They think they're great, but they haven't menstruated for 2 years. Right. Or they can't get pregnant. And so they think because they're fit, and it's like, no, I believe that a woman should move every day. But if you really look at it this way, it's dramatically different than a man. A man should stress out his body every single day. It really should. Now, here's what happens. Now, Gabe, I'm going to answer that question for you. Yeah. If you look at it this way, testosterone, for example, has very little fluctuation. Okay. Testosterone, once again, once a young man hits puberty, it elevates significantly and stays there for a long time unless you start to do things to drop it down. So you can convert your testosterone into estrogens. And you know the easiest way to do that is adipose tissue. Eat too much sugar, too many calories. So men will destroy themselves by their behaviors. Women are going to destroy themselves by their mental stress. I guess they're both behaviors, but one's a little bit more controllable than the other. So that's why people say testosterone's all-time low. Yeah, because you're putting yourself in the converting your testosterone into estrogens. And it's why 1 out of every 100 breast cancer cases are now men. 1 out of every 100. Think about that.
Wow.
Because estrogens, it's why you see so much gynecomastia. It's why you see so much abdominal obesity and everything like that. And so therefore, they're going to do it through their habitual habits. Now, when women do it that way, they can stress their body out. It's much more sensitive stress. So that's why they're more affected by, and I call it 3 T's: trauma, toxins, and thoughts. Okay. Thoughts is the mental stress. Toxicity, that's why your husband can drink soda all day long, which I never encourage. Too much sugar, too many things. And then he stops drinking it for a week, he drops 20 pounds. And a woman stops for a week and gains 3 pounds.
I've heard that every day my entire career. Yeah. Why? Yeah.
Well, because there's the stressors can have such an effect on the endocrine system. Now, what I really realized when I started looking at all the female hormones, especially for cyclic women, because my wife is cyclic at the time, and I learned about stuff in school, but no one ever put it together for everybody. And that's where I, over the last 26 years, started to really put it together. So now that the public can understand, but even from a clinical standpoint. I mean, the fact that I started looking at a hormone chart of a woman that cycles roughly 28 to 38 days per month. And I started looking and go, oh my goodness, testosterone, it elevates and maintains a very good level. And Gabe, here's what happens. Testosterone is a little higher in the morning. You know how women can tell?
Everyone can
Guess
tell.
what happens? Yeah, that's right. In the morning erection. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, it's a natural thing because testosterone goes a little higher in the morning, but then it tapers down a little bit during the day, but stays pretty consistent.
Right.
With women, guess what happens? Their hormones, I pull up the chart, I'm like, oh my goodness. And I create a chart that's been shared millions of times on the internet where I showed that women's hormones change 4 times in the month. Now, let's take this, Gabe, let's take this in the situation. That means there's mental and physical consequences that happen to a woman 4 times in the month. Ladies, let me explain. Let's talk about the physical one. Ladies, one morning you wake up, you put your bra on, it's all nice and full. Next week you put your bra on, it's a bunch of shriveled raisins. You understand?
Yes.
And it's like, you're like, hey, doc, where did they go? Well, where are in your cycle? Because I divided into 4 different weeks and I labeled them to show women then what happens this? Because then happens this. There is mental consequences. That means a woman actually changes hormonally 4 times in a month. And you see that. And then of course, I like to say some things that are a little bit provocative. But really it gives women a little peace. Because I came out with an article one time, a statement. I said, listen, think about it this way. Women's hormones fluctuate up and down. That means they do physically, they do mentally. That means there's no such thing as a mentally stable woman. Do you say because they're fluctuating up and down. That's biology.
Yeah, right,
and
right.
Women, the feminists got offended. The Christian women and the women that recognize that this is a God-given process, it gave them peace because mentally, guess what happens? They're going to be different. Now they have a reason where they think nothing's wrong finally.
Right. Yeah. Well,
that's good.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a really interesting point. And I just feel like the more that women can understand their own physiology, cycling women in particular, it is helpful because we talk about this all the time. Like you can know this stuff about yourself or you can take an Enneagram test and be like, well, I'm this personality. You still have to obey God. And I understand that, but it's very helpful though. If you're the week before your period and you know that, okay, everybody smells bad to me and I at least know why, right? Rather than just feeling like a crazy person, because I think that is a thing. And I think women have to some degree been gaslighted for a long time, just like, oh, well, you're insane, you're unstable, just because we're different than men are.
But let me explain this. And my Christian friends still have a little problem with this. We're not equal.
Right.
Men and women are not equal. We're not. And see, because what happens is this, we don't even have equal roles. My wife, I don't want to perform her role, and she shouldn't perform mine. We're not equal. Right. I'm not equal at producing a child. So it's concept of equality. And because a lot of people think, well, and I'm going to say this from a business standpoint to understand this. I employ, you met Aaron, I employ wonderful women and I teach them, go for your dreams, but keep the stress down because there's physical consequences to you guys compared to us. Okay. Yeah. Second of all, therefore, I can push harder physically. I can stay up. And that's why women by nature need a little bit more sleep than men. I've proven that. Actually, and then women actually come back and say, and they get peace over that. The only reason why they don't have peace from that is because our current culture tries to say, here, this is the direction we need women to go. You're equal with this. I'm like going, be careful.
I agree.
We have the most, divorce rates high, illness for women's all-time high, all these things. I'm like going, and then everything's, and the one thing that was interesting that I really learned, and remember, I learned so much from sitting across women talking about this all the time. When I started to talk about the 4, I call I always say there's 4 stages to a woman that way. And I labeled them and I made it humorous, but I also made it very impactful that way. And so a woman would come to me and say, I'd be feeling this way. I'm like, okay, where are you in cycle? I'm like, well, these are the mental consequences of being during a time, both good and bad. He's saying, compared to, that's why a woman can go from when she first starts her menstrual period and her hormones are lowest. Ladies, let me ask you a simple question. Do you feel like going for a run when you have your cycle? No. When you're menstruating? No. Okay. But then a week later, when hormones are jacking up like crazy, you feel like you can take on the world. You say, and so a woman needs to understand those patterns. And that has more of a dictation of what she should do than trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to run your kids every single place and do everything and do all those things. And because you're working with your physiology and stuff. So it's just a different way of looking at things. And we've had great clinical success. Women have been healthier, happier. And then it's kind of neat because then the man, would come home and she'd be in a different emotional state instead of like going, what's wrong with you? It's like, hey, where you at with your cycle? And I know my wife's cycle like the back. I know my daughter's cycles like the back of my hand.
Mhm.
I have 5 women in the house.
You do. That's amazing.
So Annie, her dad's our college pastor for our church and we're University of Idaho and Washington State University. They're 7 miles apart. And she comes from a family of 7 daughters.
Yep.
So,
this stuff would have maybe been nice for him to know. He had a woodshed where he would do woodworking, and he just would go out there.
Well, see, now you're gonna laugh about this. Because I started to really focus on this so long ago, and it helped me now figure out my wife's illnesses and reverse them, and her be just healthier than ever imagined at 49 years old, still beautiful, vibrant, things like that. But I want you to think about this. And remember, this is just me, okay? Because I have some political positions based on what I understand the physiology of the body that way. Women's bodies are fascinating. They're absolutely fascinating. If you think that what it can do and what it can produce 2 cells to turn into trillions within 9 months, and all the coordination that happens and stuff like that, it's mind blowing. It really is if you think about it this way. So I actually look at women as almost like I like to study them, and I see their human behavior, and then no joke, it's like, and then if you put them in certain environments, it changes them both psychologically and physically because it changes the hormone patterns they do have. Right. And then if you put a bunch of great women together, they do start to sync up with their different hormonal responses hormone responses that way, and they start cycling at the same times and stuff like that. Come on, that's fascinating stuff right there. And that's why I look and go, if you think that we, came out of the ocean as a big old ooze and moved into it.
Right. What a joke. What a joke.
To all my Christian friends, I tell you, I do believe in the Big Bang Theory. There was 4 Big Bangs in my bedroom, and we have 4 daughters.
Amen.
That's hilarious. Well, okay. Let's keep going on. Let's double click on the relationship side of things, men and women. What is some of the best advice that you can give to men and women, I guess, who are in a marriage, dating, in relationship? What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people make, and what's some of the best advice you can give?
Well, here's what happens.
It's got to be good advice. It's got to be good advice. Okay, man.
We need great advice.
We're going to grade you on this.
A lot of people are listening.
Well, I'm also going to stand from your standpoint because I think even now, this is my opinion. So all my Christian friends, please hang in there with me there. I believe that most churches are looked at through the feminine viewpoint. I do.
100%.
That's why
that's why it's really funny. It's like, and so therefore, I believe that the man sets the tone. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, and let me say this because he's a protector and provider, and no joke. And if you have a woman, she's going to be different all the time. And so we need some more of that different stability and different things. So if you look at a man and how it affects them, from a standpoint of their biology that way, so everybody thinks like I'm, favoring the man. No, I'm not. I'm making him responsible.
Yep.
See, that's the difference.
Yeah.
That's 100%. The difference, because I believe with authority comes responsibility. You know what I'm saying? And so therefore, here's what happens. And if you look at some of the major things that guy does when it comes there, here's what happens. Now, Gabe, let me ask you a question. And I'm being totally serious about this, even though everybody laughs when I do this in front of my huge seminar. Okay. I'll pick 2 couples out. I've usually picked somebody that's, in their 70s, 80s, and I pick some young couple. And I'll go to the young couple and say, listen, do you want to have sex with your beautiful wife tonight? What do you think every man, regardless of her age, says in front of the whole crowd?
Yes,
absolutely. Now I look at the crowd. They said, does that make him a disgusting pig and perverted? No, it does not, because that's what testosterone does to us. Do you see what I'm saying? Testosterone is a very aggressive hormone that does that to us. That's why, and it keeps us very laser focused. Do you understand? That's why, ladies, it frustrates you because we can leave the house and forget you even exist. We can't.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's not true. Not for me.
No, but it's very, are you saying, is this kind of why, and maybe you'll get to it, why women can multitask and men can literally only do one thing?
Yeah.
Because it's a thing.
Yeah.
It is. Well, but here's why. Because men are programmed to be laser focused because they basically have to go to war and deal with their stresses all the time. And that's why I guarantee there's times that Gabe was stressed out and came home, Annie, and guess what? He was there, but he wasn't there.
Yeah.
I've that's never happened. That's never happened.
but see, I started to teach women. Say, listen, guys. So you come home, and me and my wife have a safe word. See, because if I come home, because remember, I have offices all over the country, and even Europe and things. And I get attacked all the time. I get all some of this.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, and then you come home. You guys said that way, and I guarantee during the times when you guys were stressed out when the state was doing stuff that way, he was home, but he was still mentally trying to prepare for war. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
And he wasn't home emotionally because he's laser focused, because a man will always get up in the morning and his first thought process is, once again, if it isn't sex, it's actually go to war, take on the world, provide for his wife, do all things this. And women don't realize, it's like, listen, and and women are so different because estrogens make them very connecting. See, so guys, here's what happens. This, you want to stimulate a woman's hormones, connect with her. It raises her hormones. It makes her, and what it does, and then she connects that to you. And see, and that's the big difference on there. And so I started to say, listen, and so there's times, for example, that we go out and we do our stuff, and then we go and we dominate and we come home. And now when we're not focused anymore, we turn our focus on you. But see, what happens is, in the old kind of crazy ways, it was like on the flip side, and this is where you hear about the feminists of today. They talk about, we just want a girl, you want a woman in the kitchen, barefoot, pregnant, and he just provides sex whenever he wants. No, that's not what a real man does. When a real man understands how a woman's built, a woman, for example, like I said, I always tell people, when you look at it like a woman, her body isn't like ours. You know what I'm saying? If we even think that we're going to have sex, guess what happens? Our focus, we're ready to go. Okay. A woman's totally different. I say a woman's like a house that you have to walk into every room in the house and turn every light switch on before you can enter the house. Okay. And because that's what happens. And if you understand that, and guess what, Gabe? I don't like that any more than you do.
Yeah.
I don't. Do you understand? But because I understand how the physiology of her body works,
right
now as a man, as a protector, because watch this. And ladies, you're going to love this part. As a man that understands that your body is very different than ours, you understand, if we even think about that, if you gave us any clue that we could have sex, we're ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
A woman is totally opposite. A woman, like I said, there has to be that connecting, everything like that way.
Right.
And so therefore, what it does, it sets us up to win with them. Because if you just dive into the house right away, physically you can hurt them.
Yeah. My pastor.
Go ahead.
Yeah. My pastor says men are like microwaves, women are like ovens.
Yep. Yeah, it's really true.
Yeah.
It's like
a crock pot.
Yep.
Yeah, a crock pot. Yeah.
And so by nature of knowing that, what it does, it sets us up to go, hey, listen, is if you look at the environment, and you think this way, if a woman, you need to be a protector, because a woman doesn't feel connected or comfortable in a non-protected area that way and stuff like that. That's why it's very different for them. A guy from a relationship standpoint, once again, we're very simple to please. We really are. It doesn't mean that being complex is bad or wrong. It's just different. And so men, what they do, so you got men like me that do extremely well financially, would have no problem just what I do stuff that way to be like, okay, I'm the man, you're going to serve me just like this. I'm like going, and I'm like, that's not the way a woman's built. Do you understand?
Yeah, that's right.
And so we just look at and teach men to go, hey, listen, this is what a woman is. And if you can do these things, not only will she love you the rest of your life, she'd really be putting in your hands and stuff like that. Yeah. Now I teach a whole 3-hour seminar on this stuff that way, and that's why it got so popular. That's where the book became so popular that way, because the next thing you know, I had churches start to use my book as a premarital counseling thing. I'm like, what? Yeah. I'm just teaching the biology and the hormones of how they work and what happens.
Yeah.
What's the name of this book?
Well, my first book, because of all the things going on in the world, I wrote it. I said, I disagree. And it talks about, and then it became an international bestseller in a week. Then 5 years later, I came out with my other book, I Still Disagree. It became an bestseller in 2 days.
Okay, so your second book is literally called I Still Disagree.
Yes.
That is the best.
That's funny.
Yes, because and here's why. When your ideas and your perspective are based on true foundational things, it can go on for 200 years and you're going to still come to the same conclusions. You say, if everything this way, I mean this when it comes to healthcare. Do you understand that when I was a kid, my parents or my grandparents would watch the news and there was a new medical breakthrough? Everybody's always looking for the newest thing. I'm like going, you understand, truly God-given things are universal. They're true now. They're going to be true 200 years from now. And it's like going, all right. So if we talk about them now or later, it's going to still be true. It's just that, everybody's looking for the newest, hottest thing. I've literally been doing the same thing for 26 years. And so it's like, it's just that awareness becomes a little bit more so people hear about that way. But then there's foundational things that we can all do together to make both men and women healthy and happy and relationships great. And it just came from a simple standpoint of knowing how men's hormones and women's hormones affect each other physically and psychologically.
Right.
It's amazing to me just kind of thinking through this. Like, I mean, God created man, male and female, so we are equal in His image, but very different in our how God created us and our calling. So God created our bodies very differently, unequally, however we want to phrase it.
Yep.
And God created us and oriented us differently. The man is oriented out to the world, and the woman's oriented toward the man. And so much of this, feminism has really, particularly destroyed has destroyed men and women differently. It's particularly set up women for constantly trying to think that their role is they are not fulfilled until they can do what men can do. And then and with men, it's affected their ability to lead, because they think if they're leading, they aren't taking in account their wife or the girl or the woman or whatever. If they're out in front and leading, then there's kind of a guilt trip to a man who's actually trying to be masculine. Yeah. Chauvinist, trying to be that's exactly right. and then what's funny is, because God created men and women, is their biology actually recognizes the theology of how God created us and the direction that God has created us for.
Yeah.
And it's funny that, and that's why I think your biology argument is so, I think, disruptive in the world is because, hey, I'm just talking about biology, and really this biology is set up this way because that's how God created us.
Let me give you two examples. One based on the abortion issue, okay? And next based on just when we talk about culture issues when it comes to male and female and why it doesn't line up. And let me explain. Now, this is just me. I'm just going to give you a biological response. When that egg hits the sperm, okay? Oh, sorry. When that sperm hits the egg, do you understand the biological changes? That's the only time that they are like that. Nowhere in a prepubescent, cyclic, and menopausal years is the physiology that way ever. So people say, when does life start? Well, it does not start 3 months after that sperm hits the egg. It transforms right there. So my standing is like life starts right there, because here's what happens this. Do you know when they remove it, the body's kind of like, oh my goodness, it kind of puts a little bit of shock, and it takes a little bit for it to change differently compared to if the baby's released naturally. Okay. So that's why I'm sitting there going, so people say, what's your stance on abortion? What's because you're Christian? I'm like, no. I just believe life starts when the sperm hits the egg, because it's the only time the physiology is ever like that. And as long as that egg and sperm are together and continues to grow, that physiology stays that way until the baby's let go. And then it starts to transform back to where it was before. So that's why my stance on abortion isn't really based on, I believe this or the Bible this. I'm going, no, God created the physiology. It changes immediately when that sperm hits the egg. Fair enough. It's a simple analogy. Okay. Second of all, let me explain something that I think most women and also men are going to understand. If we look at just the traits in today, masculinity, the God-given masculine traits are only accepted today in sports, not in men. Okay. Yeah. And I've said this for a long period of time, because if you look at competitive, if you look at aggressive, if you look at laser focus, look at all these things that if you look at what makes a great company, a great team, they're by dominant natural traits for a man. Now, what happened is, because of cultural changes, women actually now had to go in the workplace. And because that's what makes the world really good, it does. For example, you want a doctor to compete with me, because that means I got to bring up my value and service to compete with them. Otherwise, they're going to win. You know what I'm saying? So you look at sports, you put the best people, meritocracy, all things like this. But if you ever think this, if the feminine moves in the culture, you get DEI, you get participation trophies, you get all this because what happens is, now the sad part is this though, and this is where it's become very difficult. So I train all my women. Not a joke. This is part of our training here. It's like, listen, if you're going to leave the protection and provision of a household, you have to actually try to take on masculine characteristics to really do well in the world. Tell me anywhere in business, capitalism, that meritocracy isn't not only rewarded but appreciated that way.
Yep.
And for all these women say that's not true. I'm like, good. Then I want you to do a DEI. I want you to do a equality when it comes to any sports team. Like, well, I want to do that. Packers would never win. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now, and then the mental tough part is when you leave here and go home, we don't want to be married to a guy. Do you see what I'm saying? I say in the world, men have it much easier. Women actually almost have to be a little bit bipolar. They got to go act masculine in the world. They have to come home and be feminine in the household.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not feminine in the household, even the kids will suffer because we're not equal as parents.
Mm-hmm.
What my job is to do is prepare my daughter. So if my daughters want to enter the world, they come to daddy. If they want to be the greatest wife and woman in the world, they go to mama. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But if they want to go to the world, guess what happens? It's those traits, those masculine traits. So that's why it's kind of out of imbalance. And this concept that we can be equal, even in masculine traits, isn't even inherently natural. And what they do is everybody likes to talk about the exceptions, not the rule. Because the minute I brought up the abortion, you hear this. What about rape?
I know.
Can we just in general talk about the general rules of the world? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And say that the vast majority of these things, abortions, are actually just birth control. And the vast majority of women are actually what we're talking about cultural wise. And we can debate the exceptions, but let's just put the general rules down. You know what I'm saying? Because now in the world that, for example, has more feminine aspect, they only want to push this way. And I see that churches, and believe it or not, I'm very disappointed in our Christian community and our Christian leaders that way. I'm very disappointed because I believe it's now all sought through a feminine prism that way. So if you look at it this way, it's like that's why men don't go to church anymore. It's because it's
effeminized.
It's a message of hope. Men do not need hope. See, that's going to bother some women. Men do not. I have 4 daughters, but I also have 4 nephews, and my nephew has 2 young sons. Do you know when we're playing? I push them over the time. I said, get your butt back up. You say, it's like men have to have a hard life. Women have to know that life is hard. And stuff like that, because it's true.
Say that again.
You know what? Men have to have a tough life. Women have to know life is tough.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Because here's opposite. Because here's opposite. Guys have to take on hard things every day. And my favorite story of the Bible. This is how I run my life. This is not a joke. And Gabe, I see this in you, and that's why we can be friends. Now watch. I'm gonna talk about this, the David and Goliath, because it's not what people think, because everybody thinks they're David, okay? But here's the point. But I want you to take the thing. David showed up that day as a pizza delivery boy. Think about that. He came to deliver his brother's food. And then he saw 2 tribes sitting across, not doing anything, just yelling at each other, yelling insults at each other. And David's like, dude, what's going on? You're trying to offend my king, offend my culture, stuff like this. He's like, let me go after him. Brothers, they're like, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. And it's like, no. And I'm like going, and that happened during COVID to you and I, okay? But here's happens this. But then all of a sudden the king's like, you know something, man, if we do let him get killed, may rally our troops. And this is my favorite part. And this is what men have to do. And I'm speaking at a big mega church in California coming up of all places, you know what I'm saying? Because of the pastor, they're going to have me do my big seminar, which I haven't done for a couple of years, but my big seminar, and I'm speaking on a church service on Sunday. I'm going to talk about this. If you think about
who's
this
the pastor? I might know him.
Aaron will know it. Aaron, I have no idea churches. I don't care. But Aaron, so ask Aaron. You put it on the thing. But here's the point. It's the last weekend in July.
Okay.
Yep. They have a huge mega church. But here's the point. But it says, because of David's confidence and preparation of killing the lion, killing the bear, he ran towards the conflict. He ran towards the hard thing. Yeah. See, and that's what men are actually supposed to do every day. Run towards the conflict. Because you know why? Go for the hard life. Because once again, anything that you do hard today, men, you get the massive benefit later. And I don't believe that men are supposed to be happy 70% of the time. You understand that when actually the biggest thing that men, when they do hard things, everybody else around them is happy. Everybody else, their wife, their kids. Yeah, I don't expect my nephews to be happy. I expect my daughters to be happy and stuff like that. No, really, honestly.
No, and 100%. And I've said this in our marriage before, is like, if life is easy, you're doing it wrong, especially for men. I think
easy is going downhill.
Yeah, right. You're doing something wrong, especially for men. I really appreciate your comments about men need to work hard and need to go through hard things, and women need to know that life is hard or that things are hard, because our job is to protect them. Now, it's not that Now, I want my daughters to be tough, so it's not that they need to grow up and be soft, but they need to be tough as women, not as men. They need to be able to, they need to be rhetorically skillful. They need to be athletic. They need to have strong arms like the woman in Proverbs 31. It's like, but I think it's particularly important that men go through hard things, because if it's easy and gets easier, you'll end up David on the roof looking over at Bathsheba, staying home from battle.
And I think we have to, and I'm going to challenge a little bit on this game.
Yeah.
Okay. Because here's what happens. This is just a thought. I think we have to stop using men language over women, because the concept of strong is going to mislead people. You know what I'm saying? Because it's going to sound really weird. And see, because the only thing then strong, the opposite's weak. Okay. That's not really true. The feminine characteristics, once again, are very different than males. And it really is. Because here's what happens. This. I know it's going to sound really interesting. Nobody's marrying a woman because they're strong. Do you know what I'm saying? And you think of it this way, a man wants to be the gateway to every woman's life.
Mm-hmm.
It does. And so therefore that means you have to bring your value up massively and lead them. And it's very hard for a strong person to follow another strong person when it comes to that, especially. And that's why you see the battle between women go, we're strong women. Okay, what do you mean by that? And I asked them what they mean by that. It's like, okay, what you're doing is you're highlighting great feminine characteristics. But let's talk about those. Let's just not use the word strong, because now you're comparing men and women as the same and stuff like that. And so I think we need to stick with feminine characteristics and language for women. And masculine characteristics and things for a man, and and we do have those differences that way, because once again, if I were to ask you the characteristics that you're attracted to your wife, that's not one of them, because you know what I'm saying? It's like it's like, because the things that we consider strong are more masculine stuff that way, and we don't want to marry a masculine person. And on top of it, what it does, and this is where I differ, and even my Christian friends don't like this. I can honestly tell you, and I have clinical experience with this. I've had some of my greatest female doctors, my greatest female nurse practitioners, push and be strong. And guess what happens? They pass out, they have seizures, they get sick and stuff like that, because I gotta be strong. I'm like going, no, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Understand this. And that's where I really want there to be differences. Why I celebrate women's differences.
Yeah.
I actually celebrate man's differences. And if they're taught that way, because now, Durham, I agree with you. I agree with this. See, here's what happens. This, you want your daughters, just like I do, if they go to the world, they have to take on those characteristics to survive. But here's what happens. This, if you really talk to the vast majority of women, and I get to do this all the time. If I give your husband $10 million, what are you doing? Do you know what most women say? I'm getting out of that whole stressful work world, stuff of this, and I'm going to take care of my family.
Oh yeah. I hear that a lot. Yeah. There's
exactly.
a lot of, yeah.
It's inherent. And for the exceptions, for the small exceptions that say, I'm going to go do more, cool. I'm all for you, but I'm still concerned about your health long term.
I'm still a little worried about your health.
But I'm concerned. I'm concerned about your physical health. See, that's the thing. I'm concerned, and women are getting sicker and sicker every year.
Yes.
And see, when I speak like this, women are just like, preach it, doc. Talk to my husband. You know what's really funny?
Yeah.
This is where my Christian friends hanging with me on this one. Now, I'm not going to do this at this mega church, but like I said, I have very good friends that are pastors here. No joke. Love them like crazy. They're awesome. I still won't go to their church. But anyways, I love them like crazy. I said, let me preach on Sunday. Because the first thing I would say is, and you know this was what I do. What's one of the top reasons why actually even Christian couples get divorced today? It's pretty much dominant. Still, financial is one of the biggest stresses that they cause to separate.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, watch this. I'd be there. I'd be at church. Be like, all right, ladies, please do me a favor. Raise your hand. How many of you guys are financially stressed out right now, and your husband sit right next to you? And guess what happens? I guarantee that I say, get your butt out of this church, get your butt, go do some hard work, and go provide for that beautiful woman as she's sitting here stressed out, praying to God for hope, when you're supposed to be the one protection, provision over this way. Take those masculine traits, get your butt out there and do it. You know, Sam? That's just me.
Yeah. No, I know, I want to respect your time. I know. I want to respect your time, but I want to say that I've, the longer I have done health and nutrition counseling with women, where you really sit down, you dig into their whole life. It's not just prescribing
blood
exercise,
panels, all that stuff.
well, and just life.
Yeah.
How are you sleeping? How many kids do you have? How's your marriage? What do you work? Do you not? You know, I cannot believe how every year that goes by, more and more, one of the first things out of my face is, I think you need to quit your job because it's too much. It's too much. And it's not like they're bad at it or they can't, you know what I mean? But it's just like, it's not your job. We talk about this all the time. It is not your job to pay the bills. You are not responsible for that. And it's causing you to not be able to be a good wife, to be a good mom, to make, to cook dinner for your family. And it's so, I really do agree with you. I mean, I think you've basically insinuated this. It's feminism. Feminism has just wrecked everything.
Now, Andy, watch this. Okay. Now you're still young because you're in your late 20s. Okay. So you're still young.
Thank you. Thank you for thinking that.
Beautiful. You're absolutely beautiful. Here we go. Okay. So think about this, Andy. Okay. Now here's what happens. Let's use Aaron. Okay. Now I want to have a little fun with you ladies here. Okay. If you ever look at cyclic women, okay, of course that ranges between a certain age. That way, usually, from anywhere from 12, 13, 14, even if you go back 56 years ago, menstruation starts till 17, 18 years old.
I know.
Old things, but that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
But the idea is this, and if you look at a woman as they get into menopause, okay, then what happens is this, their whole cyclic hormonal things change and they actually become a little bit more dominant in more male hormones. It's why menopausal women are called cougars, okay?
Yeah.
Instead of that. Yeah, that's where the whole thing came from that way.
Yeah.
Yes, look at Aaron just stood up because Aaron knows where I'm going with this. But here's what happens. Ladies, and Annie, I want you start talking about this. Now watch this. Their biology changes and becomes more almost like a man when they hit menopause. And that's why I've noticed women that get older, now they see that their family and everything has been raised by that feminine quality of them. But then what happens is then women transform into almost like more purpose later in life. It's like, so they take these wonderful non-equal things of giving birth and raising and nurturing children. And we've taught younger generations of women, and some of the times women are coming and going, Doc, I'm 35 and I can't get pregnant. Well, yeah, because you stress yourself up. You got so many things, and now you want me to help you at 35, which I'm not saying we can't. But the idea is this: you had a better chance before you destroyed your body. Okay.
Right.
But here's the point. And then you watch these women, and then they become so purposeful. And because their hormones don't tank like they do when they're cyclic, they can push harder. They work more. They have purpose. I love hiring women that are menopausal. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I love what, like you see, and Aaron has 3 daughters, and guess what happens? Every one of them are older now, so she can work purposefully differently than when young things. So why can't women dominate in careers and do things right? But then don't forget that femininity that's so important. Guys, don't take this the wrong way. Femininity is so important to the world. If we don't have femininity, we're not having kids. We're done in a certain generations. Okay. But we've so lost masculinity trying to equate both of them and stuff that we can't. It just doesn't, biologically not possible.
Yes.
Man, Dr. Patrick Flynn, thank you so much for joining us. What websites, social media you prefer people to find you out on?
Yeah.
Well, just in general, you can go to the website, thewellnessway.com. That's the main one. Otherwise, my other social medias, Dr. Patrick Flynn, and I get kicked off all the time and stuff. I said to get another Twitter account, just get kicked off YouTube again. That way, it's like, that's all right. So it said wellnessway.com is usually the easiest one. I got a ton of free information to talk about.
All right. TheWellnessWay.com. Anything else, baby?
The book, I disagree. And the second book,
I still disagree.
I still disagree. I'm going to put that in my, I'm going to listen. Do you recommend starting with the first one? Like, do you need to go in order? Okay. Listen.
No, you don't need to. You don't need to. It's just that they just build upon each other, even though you can read both of them separate, and they'd be very impactful.
That'd be just fun.
Okay, that's so great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Flynn. Appreciate you and your ministry, your biological ministry.
Oh, it's awesome. And good luck in California.
Yes, it's going to be a fun time. I can't be thankful enough to be out there. It's going to be great.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah. A couple things go ahead. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
I like he's a guy that we don't know
at
all. And you just don't hear people talking like this very often. No wonder he gets kicked off YouTube. Every other platform, but
so
I like it. It's interesting.
Yeah, and just his re-emphasis on biology lining up with actually God's creation.
Yeah, and how when you have such an intense mismatch, which is what feminism has brought us, women take the hit and they feel terrible.
And men get lazy.
They're men take a hit in their own way. There is a war on masculinity, but women's bodies, like he said, do not handle it well when they go out and they try to act like men because they think that's the only way they can be the best version of themselves, which is so sad. But like, I honestly, I can't think of very many things in my life that I can't blame feminism for. You know, and it's in the church, you guys. It's in the church.
And we don't know how much is in the water that we drink.
Feminism
affects our community.
Yeah, and I mean, I know so many women who are Christians and they're Bible believing good women, and if I sat down with them and I was like, well, are you a feminist? They'd be like, absolutely not. But that doesn't mean that those thoughts haven't gotten into your brain from a very young age. And that's why you're trying to hold a job down, even though you don't know why. You're exhausted. Your health is terrible. You're not taking care of your body, and your stupid husband expects you to be exactly like him, I do think I want to say that this does shed some light on men really need to make somewhat of an effort. Obviously he's an expert. You don't need to go as deep as that guy is going. You don't probably need to be able to list off the 12 different types of estrogens. But I think men should, at least for the women in their own life, your girlfriend, your wife, your daughter, whatever, you should be a little bit more educated on just basic female physiology, because it really helps. Yeah. And his point about us being 4 different women throughout the month, and by that he just means we're in a completely different hormonal place, and hormones do affect your brain, which is one of the many arguments against the birth control pill, is that it actually alters your mental state. And there's stories, there's a documented, it's a phenomenon that women will be on the pill, actually get married to some dude, get off the pill, and then be like, I don't even like him.
Wow.
So messed up, so not good. But I mean, hormones, they do alter your mental state. So I just think it's a good thing for both women and men to be aware of, but some actual education on this. And I am interested. I'm going to read the book and then I'll get back to you guys. How in depth it goes on all this stuff, but maybe that would be a good place to start, because the more we can understand each other, the better, the better it's going to be. But anyways, what are your closing thoughts?
Yeah, just a couple thoughts on obviously his rhetoric and apologetic is focused on biology. He's a Christian, which brings me a lot of confidence in his worldview behind everything. Yeah,
a pretty unapologetic one.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask where he goes to church in Wisconsin. Where do you go?
Yeah. That's actually an interesting question.
I bet he'd tell us. We could ask
I'm sure he would.
Yeah.
But I'm a pure presuppositionalist, and I think he'd actually agree with a lot of this. But when he was talking about abortion, one of the reasons why I believe it's wrong to kill is because of the biology of what's happening.
Right.
And I would want to amen that. And he amens, and I'm sure he would amen this point too. But this wasn't his emphasis. But the reason why I think abortion is wrong all the way to conception is because the Bible defines life at conception multiple times in scriptures. So I want to start with the scriptures and then work with the biology. Now he's a biologist and doctor and all that stuff.
Yeah,
so
I totally agree.
I don't have a problem with what he was saying, but I want to unabashedly be presuppositional and even my biology on this. So that's just one thing that stuck out. And again, I don't think he would disagree with me on what I just said either.
No, but you're right. And I really have enjoyed throughout my career in health and fitness, seeing over and over and over again how just basic things that the Bible says with zero biological explanation actually are shown to be true in nature, in our bodies, in life. So it's not the other way around. It's not like, oh, we see this here, therefore we believe the Bible. It's the other way around. That's your point. But it's always true. So anyways, well, that was an interesting interview, huh?
Yeah,
he's an entertaining guy.
I enjoyed it. He talks real well, and he's easy to listen to actually.
Yeah, he is. He's got that Midwestern accent. But I'm gonna check out the book, you guys. I will. I disagree. I will report back. Maybe we'll get him back on some other time. Yeah. This has been 3 weeks in a row of interviews.
Next week, we're off because I'm in Pennsylvania.
What about the week after?
But the following week we'll be back.
Okay, and we're gonna actually do our own show.
Yes.
It's just been a while.
Interview.
I know. I've got a bunch of questions written down. I got to figure out. We got to figure out which one to do next. But okay. So not next week, but the week after, we'll be back.
Yeah, and I've actually enjoyed a lot of these interviews. They've been really helpful for me, and so I hope you guys, if you guys want to go back in the archives and catch some of those interviews, you can go download our Fight Laugh Feast app. That's where you can get all our shows in a nice little package app along with other shows as part of the network and everything. And if you guys want to be supporting us, join the club. Go to fightlaughfeast.com. Join the club. It's a great way to support what we're doing. And lastly, we work with corporate partners. We're already bringing some corporate partners on board, Asana company, other stuff like that. If you guys want to reach out to us, email us wrenchmedia@gmail.com. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Is that it?
2 weeks. Yep.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you, crew.
See you guys.
What if you could join a network of business leaders who share your Christian values, who reject the separation of faith and business, and who have a fierce vision for success? Welcome to Business Makers Network, a network that strives to create community, build intellectual wealth and practical business knowledge, and grow thriving businesses for the kingdom. We're not just another business network. We are a community of unapologetic Christian leaders who understand that success in business blesses our customers, blesses our families and employees, and in the end drives greater profits. All of Christ for all our business efforts as we aim to take the talents God has given us and turn them into 30, 60, and 100-fold. With a combined net worth already exceeding $1 billion in committed memberships, our members are reshaping the business landscape while staying true to our Christian values and taking dominion in the lanes God has paid for us. As a member, you'll gain exclusive access to our Business Makers Network app, discounts to live workshop events, network calls with key influencers, access to like-minded Christian business leaders, a pool of hands-on intellectual wealth and practical business knowledge, mentorship and menteeship programs. We will be rolling those out over the coming year. Read-only access for the tier above you for educational purposes. Invitations to our annual corporate partner dinner. Networking events at the Fight Laugh Feast conference. We offer membership tiers designed to match your business journey. From our exclusive Double Diamond level for industry titans, to our green membership for promising startups, to our MVP tier that is looking for a community of Christian, like-minded business leaders. There's a place for every serious business leader in our community. Your network is your net worth. Join Business Makers today and become a part of a movement that is changing the face of Christian business leadership. Visit our website now to secure your membership and step into a community where faith, business, and success align.